News channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, happy Boxing Day. Can I say that? Merry Christmas too. Whatever. It's 9:30 on Tuesday, the 26th of December. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Dawn Neeson. And coming up, we have got some cracking stuff for you. Bargain hunters are set to make this the biggest Boxing Day in 4 years. Despite the cost of living crisis, shoppers are expected to spend an average of £253 each. And it was officially a white Christmas for 2023. This is a cheat, isn't it? As parts of northern Scotland on the very high ground were hit by a light dusting of snow. Sorry, that's a rip-off. Now, as many begin to travel home after celebrations, so the Met Office has issued yellow weather warnings for ice, rain and wind for today and tomorrow. And later in the show, we'll get an in-depth analysis of King Charles's Christmas speech. You didn't miss it, did you? I hope not. Where he pays tribute to a selfless army of volunteers in heartfelt Christmas address. And tens of thousands are expected to meet at Boxing Day hunts across the UK, often attended by anti-hunting protesters. This year is predicted to be no different. any case, it's not about me, it's all about you, your thoughts. So get in touch, let us know what you're thinking about all our talking points today. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.com. Leave your name and where you're watching or listening from. But first, here is the news with the very lovely Sophie Wensler.
Thank you, Dawn. Good morning. It's 9:31. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. Labour is considering plans to process asylum seekers' claims overseas, according to a report in The Times. Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper and Shadow Immigration Minister Stephen Kinnock have reportedly been speaking to asylum experts to draw up an alternative way to stop migrants crossing the Channel in small boats. The plan would see asylum seekers have their claims processed in a second country, with successful applicants allowed to enter the UK. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has previously dismissed the government's Rwanda scheme as a gimmick. Tory MP Mike Freer tells GB News his constituency offices remain a crime scene as police investigate a suspected arson attack. Fire crews were called to the building in North London on Christmas Eve after it was partially damaged by the blaze. The MP told GB News police are examining CCTV footage and he does not yet know when his office will be released back to him. No one was in the building at the time of the incident. Marks and Spencer's and John Lewis are among major retailers who have opted to remain closed this Boxing Day. Traditionally, the day after Christmas is one of the busiest shopping days of the high streets, with this year expected to be the biggest in 5 years. Wickes, Pets at Home and Home Bargains, as well as other major supermarkets, Aldi Iceland and the majority of Waitrose stores will not open today. More than 3/4 of people are expected to do the majority of their shopping online instead. And you can get more on all those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com. Now it's back to Dawn.
Thank you, Sophia, and happy Boxing Day. Merry Christmas. Whatever you're doing, it's the 26th of December, and I hope you're having a lovely time still. I'm Dawn Neeson, and I'll be with you for the next hour and a half. And we have lots of things to talk about. How was your Christmas day? How's Boxing Day going? Did you enjoy the King's speech? Did you watch it? Used to be religious in our house, but not sure we got it this year. The biggest sports events of the day, and also tens of thousands are expected to meet at Boxing Day hunts across the UK. Joining me in the studio is broadcaster and journalist Claire Muldoon and former advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley. Thank you very much for joining me today on Boxing Day. Really lovely to have you. And now, what are we going to talk about first of all? I think we're going to go straight in on the biggie. How was your Christmas day?
Mine was lovely,
Thank
you very much. I had my kids back. I'm an empty nester now. I've still got one in Australia, but the other 3 were back, and it was truly special. It was wonderful, and I love it. And I can't wait to get back to them now, so we need to hurry up.
Yeah, well, OK, all right. Quick, Charlie. How was Christmas? Then we're going, all right?
Well, I couldn't wait to get here, Dawn.
No,
it's fine, it's fine. Look,
you could have dressed for the part, Charlie.
I'm sorry, clearly. Come on, I mean, Charlie, she's got her, Claire's got her lovely gold shoes on. I've got sparkly shoes on too, and you've got trainers.
My white is on. But
Party at the bottom, business at the top.
Exactly. No, but it was a good Christmas. It was absolutely fine. It was we're a small family, so not too much going on.
Did you cook?
I helped.
Can you cook?
Clear the table. I can rustle.
Can you?
I can rustle up.
Hold on a minute. Hold on.
Can you rustle up?
I'll rustle you up something later on, maybe.
Hold on a minute. Now, I always find that it's acceptable for a woman to say that. Can you actually cook? Now, in my house, if the husband didn't cook, I would literally starve to death.
Do you not cook?
No. Claire, he won't let me boil a kettle for a cup of tea. I'm so bad.
Oh, but Dawn, that's lovely service. That's the spirit of Christmas, is it not? That's a lovely marriage.
It's lasted a long time.
Yes.
No, he actually did a lovely dish for us yesterday, and it was mostly fish, I think. I wasn't quite good at identifying it, because I might have had a glass of champagne by that point. Just one, obviously. But no, it was a really, really lovely Christmas day.
Lovely.
I love cooking for other people. I'm not very good cooking for myself, because I think that's a bit sort of boring. It's always just too easy to put something in the microwave.
Don't like the clearing up of it. That's the problem. I'm a great cook. an absolutely fantastic cook. And, you know, everyone loves coming to our house for food because it's such a lovely way to invite people in. It's a very warm way through food and drink and stuff, so it's really lovely. And especially the Feast of Christmas is very important to us. So it was beautiful. But even today, we've got friends coming round. So it's going to be so lovely.
Are you doing the whole leftover thing? Are you doing that sort of like...
Well, there hasn't been much left over, I have to say. Big ham, big turkey. I mean, you've seen the size of my son. I mean, come on. He plays rugby.
Oh, well, we've got nowhere to go now, Dawn.
Such a good cook.
Leftovers. So what are you up to today, then? I mean, we know you are now going and having a lovely, lovely meal with your family.
But we should be starting here, actually. We should have a glass of something in front of us, shouldn't we?
We do, Claire. It's called...
H2O. GBH2O.
Yeah, we have been... It's not gin, honestly, Mum, if you're watching. But we have been...
If you're watching, I love that.
We have been let down. I'm sorry to say, it's a very sad announcement because he's no longer with us. She's been sacked. The producer forgot to supply.
Shall we name the producer?
Are we allowed to name him? I don't think we should mention Dean by name.
No. Spenno.
No. So, I mean, but what did you... Right, the King's speech. Right?
Yeah.
In our house, it used to be religion to sit down and watch the Queen. I have to confess, I missed it yesterday, the King's speech. Did you watch it?
It's never been something on our radar to do. I mean, I'm not much of a monarchist, I have to say, but I did really respect and admire the late Queen. King Charles, for me, just doesn't quite catch it, doesn't quite hit the note for me. So in any event, it wouldn't have been something as a norm for us to do on Christmas Day. So therefore, it completely flew out of the window, metaphorically speaking, of course. What about you, Charlie?
Yeah, I think I did suggest it at 3 o'clock because we've got a baby niece, 2 years old. So timings all sort of revolved around.
Yeah.
Absolutely rightly so. With it between Christmas presents, and she's a bit ill at the minute, so it was just sort of when she's awake, when she's not. So, but it got to about 3 o'clock when we started to eat, and I did suggest to the table, can we just watch the King's speech? And I got short shrift from the rest of the family. So it was a sort of no, we're going to eat now. I said okay, I'll watch it later on. Didn't quite get round to watching it all, but I did see the highlights of it, and him talking about the war and conflict, particularly in the Middle East, and making sure that we can all extend peace. And
I thought that was really interesting, actually, as a monarch, to actually delve into. I mean, there was obviously his climate's very, very close to King Charles's heart, but also as defender of the faith, as head of the Church of England, I thought it was lovely that he actually quoted the Bible and mentioned the fact of peace and goodwill in this festive season, especially as you had Pope Francis, head of the Catholic Church, at the Vatican for the Papal Mass, Midnight Mass, to say that, the birthplace of Jesus clearly was Jerusalem, regardless if you're not a Christian or whatever, that is what Christians believe, and Justin Welby as well, to often mirror what was said. And both of them, if you actually look at the speeches and look at the quotes, they haven't come out on the side of the Israelis, nor the side of the Palestinians vis-a-vis Hamas. They actually spoke about the need for a ceasefire, being pro-life on both sides, but the release also of the hostages that are being held on both sides, and the innocence of the children, especially at the time of Christmas, birth of Christ, being caught up in all of this. I mean, there was very powerful messages there.
I think that's one of the things, Charlie, I was concerned about, because the Queen was always completely apolitical in literally everything she did. Charles, as we know, has always actually got involved. Remember the spidery letters that he wrote to Parliament? I was a bit worried that he would be a bit more political than he actually was, but I think Claire's right. It was a very balanced speech, wasn't it?
I think so, and Claire's absolutely right. It was, the interfaith integration, so making sure that people of different faiths can get along, that we can have a multicultural society and be successful within it. And it's not just talking about those in the Middle East, but when there are issues in this country, when you have a cost of living crisis, when there is an issue with domestic politics and people do find themselves more entrenched in their own views and there becomes slightly more hate in the world, it's about making sure that there is that peace and harmony throughout. And you're absolutely right. He's been very the King has been an advocate for climate change. legislation and for more things to be done in that field. I think in November on his birthday he set up a campaign to make sure that food waste, was going not to the was going to people who might be sleeping rough or to people that can use that food rather than it just going to landfill. So he's a campaigner by heart, but you're right, making sure that he's above politics per se, like the late Queen, is obviously a very difficult tightrope for him to balance. But I think he's been getting it right. So far.
I think what did you make of his living tree? It was the one thing I noticed. I mean, if you did watch at home, he was doing it in the Buckingham Palace room, where just in front of the balcony, was it? So you had the living tree, which basically means it's planted in a pot of earth, so you can take it out in the garden afterwards, with orange on it. Nothing really sparkly on there, was it? There's bits of orange hanging on there. But it meant he got round the problem of having family photos. The Queen always used to do it sitting at like a table with family photos dotted around. And she always got taken to task. And the people would always interpret which picture she had. And she didn't have Harry and Meghan the other year, did she? So that was interpreted.
But that's quite a matriarchal thing, though, isn't it? Do you never used to go round to your mums or your grannies or something like that, and then whichever child or whatever was favourite of the month, the picture was always like first on the fridge or first out.
Yeah. We're only a small family, so there's only 2 of us in our family. So it was like we both got pride of place. But I thought that was quite clever, though, Charlie, because it got around any of the political division that is currently, as we know, in the royal family.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I mean, in our house, I've only got one sister, and down, overhanging sort of the fireplace, down one side of the wall you've got my sister, and on the other side we've got our cats. So I think I know where.
That's exactly what I mean. That's exactly what I mean.
So where exactly are you in the great scheme of things?
I think in the downstairs loo, I'm afraid. That's about it. That's about it.
Along with the front cover of Private Eye, like everyone else.
Exactly. But you're right. It goes back to. I mean, the King's done a big documentary as well, and I don't think. I think I'm right in saying that Prince William and Prince Harry haven't been included in that documentary about him. Which
is this the one that's going out tonight? Because there's a documentary going out tonight. It's a year, the coronation. It's like behind-the-scenes cameras following them.
I think so. I think so. I think I'm right in saying that.
Yes, I think that's on today, and it's completely behind the scenes, and it shows them being very affectionate. Because I mean, Harry in his book Spare wrote that they weren't a touchy-feely family.
No.
There was no hugging, no kissing. But I think in this, it is shown to Charles to be very huggy, certainly with William and with the grandchildren as well.
Do you know what I found lovely? The walk from the church in Sandringham yesterday, the Sandringham estate. I thought it was lovely that George was holding hands with Zara Phillips' child.
Lovely, yeah.
So that wee child, she's just gorgeous.
Little Mia.
Mia. She's just beautiful. And then the hug that Mike Tyndall gave Prince George.
Yeah.
That's what people really want to see, because that is real life.
It's human.
It's very human. It's that human interest that we haven't often been able to see.
Yeah.
And the photo obviously released by Prince William and Princess Kate of their 3 children, George, Charlotte and
Louis.
Thank you, yes.
You're welcome. I'm here all day.
But that was very modern, wasn't it? It was like sort of like literally T-shirts, jeans, trainers. I mean, very modern.
But it's not what Christmas is about, though, Dawn. I think that's very...
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know. Well, we know.
Yeah, exactly.
We know.
I know what you think.
I'm inspired by the royal family.
Yeah.
That's my line, and I'm sticking to it.
Oh, you spun that one, my love.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well done there. But what did we make of talking to them going to church at Sandringham yesterday, as they have done traditionally? As you say, Claire, it was much more a family inclusive feel to it. So much so that Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson...
I know, right?
...was there, and that's the first time, I think, since 1991 or 2, is it? It's a long time.
It's very odd, especially with the column inches that came out about Victoria Giuffre a few days ago about Prince Andrew. So there's still... issues there that I don't think any of us are particularly comfortable with. And yet to see Fergie, who's come through breast cancer, and she is still the mother of Eugenie and Beatrice. And it's nice for them maybe to have their mum on board, on site. But I think it's quite a huge move.
I think so. What do you make of that, Charlie?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was 1992, I think, or 3, when
it's
something around a long
yeah.
time. I mean, I was 2 or 3, rather, so it's not my history.
Just as if the trainers weren't bad enough, I've gone on with you more now.
So I'm not a huge... I don't have huge knowledge about the history of the family dating back that far, but I think it's just a reflection on King Charles, how he wants to be more inclusive,
yes, but
it seems to me, and bringing the family
church yesterday.
Back together. Exactly, and Andrew was there, obviously, as well. You can see, and beautiful pictures there. Yeah, of them all sort of just gathering outside and having.
But they look relaxed and they look happy. That's the message that I've got, and which is so lovely. Instead of the vitriol that's coming out from Montecito.
Well, there has been that tension, hasn't there, with Prince Harry, you know, constantly, and you know, the wars between him and his brother William and his father, obviously the King Charles. So to see them, you were absolutely right, to see them all there, actually just enjoying what was a traditional family get together pre-Christmas, I think is.
Because the other element of the speech, if you were going to not pick holes as such, but analyse it, possibly over-analyse it, Dawn, is that, you know, Charles was talking about, as we were talking about, family and how it's good to be inclusive, and that's why obviously Andrew and Sarah Ferguson were walking to church with him. But do you think there might have been, no matter how subtle, a little tiny dig there at Harry and Meghan?
Oh, I hope not. I hope they can rise above that. And, you know, King Charles has got a mammoth task ahead of him. You know, and especially, I think it's tougher for him now in our society where communication is all over the place. It's 24/7. We've got things called social media now, which I don't think are helping anyone, be it the President of the United States, be it the Prime Minister of the UK, or even, you know, the head of the royal family in the UK, Prince Charles. Everything is forensically analysed. We're even talking about it now. You know, so it makes it...
just me, just sort
No,
of
it's not, Dawn. It's not. No, Dawn, it's not. Because, you know, column inches are filled with stuff like this. You know, it's not history yet because it's not finished. We're still dealing with it in the present. And there's a...
No, I think that's right. I think if it's, I hope it's not a dig, but hopefully it could be.
I just, you know, I'm a tabloid journalist. I'm going to overanalyse everything, to be honest with you. But
you're absolutely right. But you hope it could be an example of if you've been excluded for some time as a family member, there is a way back. And so there could be something in that to say to Harry, look, you know, let make up and get back to the family.
Is that what we'd like to see? I mean, I must admit, I am old enough, thanks, Charlie, to have actually interviewed Princess Diana when the boys were very, very young, and she was lovely. And the one thing I always remember her saying was the reason she was so proud of her boys was because the way William looked after his little brother. She goes, they are there for each other. And she goes, I always hope, and it haunts me now. And she goes, I hope that they will always be there for one another. And I think now of what has happened and all the bad blood that is now quite clearly between them, and you think, I really hope that at one point they can overcome all this. But
of course, I think a lot of people do think that. I think that because I think my children have got their great rocks for each other. And they're, you know, they're great dependents. And if I weren't around, I know they'd be fine. They'd be well looked after amongst themselves. But for any woman, and in the way that I think Meghan has, driven a wedge instead of try to bring the family together, because she felt she was bigger than the royal family. She felt she was better than the royal family. And I think she put herself above Harry's role of duty and service, because I think, honestly, those two words aren't in that woman's vocabulary.
I'm actually going to play devil's advocate here with Meghan. I mean, man, and it's a bit Yoko Ono just to blame Meghan for what happened. What do you reckon, Charlie?
Well, I think I think two things. I mean, first of all, you know, Harry and William are two, you know, grown men. They're very proud men. They are clearly they've had a big falling out, but they will be, I'm sure, big enough and proud enough at some point to make that reconciliation that needs to happen. I'm sure that will happen because of the responsibility. And I think there will always be that brotherly attachment that William, when he becomes king, Harry will obviously still be his brother, and he will need to support his brother in that way. And, you know, the brothers will need to rely on each other. I do think, I do agree with Claire to an extent that I think when there were clearly difficulties, and Harry was clearly having a lot of difficulties with the royal family and his royal duties, I think instead of there being that supportive,
nurturing environment,
wife, exactly, to say, no, come on, and you make sacrifices in relationships. And I'm not entirely sure how many sacrifices Meghan was prepared to make, and that maybe drove that wedge even further than somebody maybe just sort of accepting it and trying to help her.
And I think the turning point was when Prince William said to Harry early on, you know, just watch it, just, you know, calm down a bit, take your time.
Yeah.
And I think that really ruffled Harry's feathers.
Yes. Yeah.
But do you think that's a fair thing for one brother to say?
Absolutely.
Well, I think if you have all the, and I'm a huge supporter of the monarch and royal family, but if you have all of those privileges, I know it is a hard life, harder than many people think, because you're always in the public eye, but you do have a lot of, and you do have a lot of responsibility, but you do have a lot of privilege as well. So I think the balance between, you know, accepting your responsibility, but also things will get tough. But when, you know, exactly as you just said, Claire, if, you know, someone who is outside of the family that comes in that maybe wants to try and shake things up or thinks that they should be doing things differently when it's always been sort of done this way, when it does ruffle feathers, you do need to kind of know your place, to know when to maybe ask for something different or to suggest a change or a tweak here and there, not full frontal rebranding.
Do you know what? I'm still astounded that people in this country, as friends, don't actually say to their friends, look, he's a wrong 'un. I really don't think you should be with him or her or whatever. People are very reticent to actually say anything like that to one another.
It's a really difficult conversation to have, though.
But it's not. I do it all the time. Well, not all the time. And you can imagine.
Not around yours for lunch. I don't want you meeting the husband. Dawn, just a quiet word. But, I mean, it is a hard conversation. I mean, my sister, God bless her, is, you know, very, very happily married now. But, you know, one or two of her previous men friends.
Well, my ex-husband,
there may be a problem.
I was really, I mean, at the time when I was going to get married, my parents and lots of people said, well, you should think about this before you run it. You know, just don't do it. They were right. They were absolutely right. But had they not said that, then, you know, there was things that might just have been overlooked.
Yeah.
And what's really, I think, difficult about this is that you talked about the two boys and that interview with Diana, which I think is absolutely brilliant, because that's when they were boys and that's when they actually, it seemed to be a family.
Yes.
When they go on to be princes, they have their own estates, they have their own press officers, they have their own departments.
Do you want a job, Charlie?
No.
Do you fancy that one?
No, absolutely.
How was Michael Gove in comparison?
No, he was great boss, great man.
Yeah, we actually have to move on now.
Oh, but
you're staying around, you're not going anywhere.
Oh, are we not?
No, we've got more of you coming up.
Oh, right.
But we have to talk about the other big thing that happened yesterday, and it was TV. So yesterday, it was a huge day for some of our television favourites, but which programmes performed the best on the most festive day of the year? To bring us up to date on this one is the wonderful Hayley Palmer, who has got all the gossip on yesterday's big shows. Hayley, looking glamorous and gorgeous as ever. Thank you, making the effort, unlike some people we could mention in the studio of the boy Persuasion, that is.
5 minutes ago, Dawn, I was in my dressing gown, eating my Weetabix. It wasn't very glamorous.
So, Hayley, what was the best performing show of the day yesterday?
Well, do you know what? I actually don't have the results anywhere for what was the best, but I do have the betting odds, and I do kind of have my own kind of spin on this. So, obviously, the King's Speech was the highest, followed by Doctor Who, which I know, Dawn, you're like a huge fan of Doctor Who, so I know you'll be pleased about that. Call the Midwife was a massive show, and Strictly Come Dancing. I don't know if you managed to watch it or people did at home, but I thought it was absolutely spectacular. And Jamie Borthwick from EastEnders won with a quick step, which is always a complete crowd pleaser. I mean, actually in Strictly, they used to bring back the kind of best contestants, but now they just have fresh contestants. But it's something that's got to be done on Christmas Day, right?
Oh, no, absolutely. And I love the new Doctor Who. I know it's had lots of complaints, etc., etc. But I think it worked very well. It's lively, it was fun, it was full of action, and it wasn't too full of lectures. And we had some quite good monsters in it, I thought. Now, the one thing I'm not a big fan of is soaps, Hayley.
Oh,
go on.
I really
EastEnders, did someone die or something?
The drama, I actually couldn't sleep last night because I had to watch EastEnders twice. I just couldn't believe the ending. And Dean, big shout out to Dean, who's the producer.
No spoiler, Hayley, no spoiler. Don't.
But he did a good prediction. He nearly got it right, but he didn't quite get it right. Let's just say, if you haven't seen it, please go and watch it. Even if you don't watch EastEnders, if you tune in, you will not believe it, honestly. And do you know what I love about it? Sometimes they build it up, because this has been building up since February, and you think, oh yeah, it's going to be a complete letdown. No. Coronation Street was a letdown. EastEnders, yes, they smashed it. Well done to the producers.
Hold on, they built up a storyline for 9 months.
Yes, yes. But don't worry, you can still tune in now. You could still go in today and watch it on Catch Up. Do it.
Okay, and let's talk about Ghosts, shall we, quickly? I think it was the very last episode of Ghosts yesterday, which I think I did watch it. I quite enjoyed it. Quite poignant.
Did you? Yeah, no. I wasn't into that, I'm afraid, my love. But I did watch. I was watching Only Fools and Horses. I was watching all the comedy shows. Like, that's more me. I love a little comedy, especially
Hayley, unfortunately, Hayley, we're running out of time, unfortunately. Oh, sorry, my lovely. Oh, thank you very much. That's Hayley Palmer. We're back very soon. Don't go too far.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Good morning, happy Boxing Day. It's 10 a.m. on Tuesday, the 26th of December, and Merry Christmas as well still. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Dawn Neeson, and a great show coming up. Bargain hunters are set to make this the biggest Boxing Day in 4 years, despite the cost of living crisis. Shoppers are expected to spend an average of £253 each. And it was officially a white Christmas for 2023. Get this, as parts of northern Scotland, the very high bits, had a high dusting of snow. OK, now, as many begin to travel home after celebrations, so the Met Office has issued a yellow weather warnings for ice, rain and wind for today and tomorrow. And coming up, we'll get an in-depth analysis of King Charles's Christmas speech, where he pays tribute to a selfless army of volunteers in a heartfelt Christmas address. And tens of thousands are expected to meet at Boxing Day hunts across the UK, often attended by anti-hunting protesters, and this year is predicted to be no different at all. But this is not about me, it's about you. What you think. So let us know all your thoughts on our talking points today. Email at gbviews@gbnews.com. Leave your name and where you're watching from or listening from. But first, here is your news headlines with Sophie Wensler.
Thank you, Dawn. Good morning. It's 1 minute past 10. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. Labour is considering plans to process asylum seekers' claims overseas, according to a report in The Times. Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper and Shadow Immigration Minister Stephen Kinnock have reportedly been speaking to asylum experts to draw up an alternative way to stop migrants crossing the Channel in small boats. The plan would see asylum seekers have their claims processed in a second country, with successful applicants allowed to enter the UK. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has previously dismissed the government's Rwanda scheme as a gimmick. Tory MP Mike Freer tells GB News his constituency offices remain a crime scene as police investigate a suspected arson attack. Fire crews were called to the building in North London on Christmas Eve after it was partially damaged by the blaze. The MP told GB News police are examining CCTV footage and he does not yet know when the offices will be released back to him. No one was in the building at the time of the incident. Marks & Spencer's and John Lewis are among major retailers who've opted to remain closed this Boxing Day. Traditionally, the day after Christmas is one of the busiest shopping high street days of the year, with this year expected to be the biggest in 5 years. Wickes, Pets at Home and Home Bargains, as well as major supermarkets, Aldi, Iceland and the majority of Waitrose stores will not open today. More than 3/4 of people are expected to do the majority of their shopping online instead. CEO of British retailers, Andrew Goodacre, says businesses will be hoping people spend more.
It has been such a difficult year for so many, as I said, and now is the time to eke out every last penny we can from shoppers out there, people who can afford, hopefully, to spend that little bit more at this time of year. And I think every business will be looking to do that. And I think, fingers crossed that every business succeeds in what they want to do and what they want to achieve in the next 7 days.
Labour has been warned to stay away from traditional Boxing Day fox hunt parades ahead of the next general election. Countryside campaigners have told the party to end its running attack on rural communities. They say Sir Keir Starmer risks igniting a toxic culture war if his party repeats past attacks on rural life. Fox hunting was banned in England and Wales in 2004. However, Labour has vowed to crack down on all hunts. Countryside Alliance Chief Executive Tim Bonner says if Sir Keir Starmer chooses to tighten legislation further, there will be a fight.
And this really isn't about foxes, and this debate never really has been. It's about people, and it's about the fact that there are elements of the animal rights movement and elements of the political left, the Labour Party, who cannot cope with the fact that hunts still exist, that they are still meeting today, that tens of thousands of people will be going out to support them. So I think it was bizarre, frankly, that we're really thinking again about going back to legislate further on this issue. But have no doubt, if they do, there will be a fight.
Charities have warned more than 1 million of the UK's most vulnerable adults will be living in a Dickensian cold and damp home this Christmas period. Households have endured another year of energy bill misery amid the ongoing effects of the pandemic and Russia's invasion of Ukraine. This year has seen record high levels of people in debt to their energy supplier. That's according to the Director of Energy at Citizens Advice, Gillian Cooper. It comes as Ofgem announces the energy price cap will rise again to just over £1,900 from the 1st of January. And Queen Camilla has hosted an afternoon tea at Windsor Castle for a girl with a brain tumour. The little girl, who has spent most of her life on chemotherapy, sang a Christmas song and gave the Queen a handmade ring when she was invited. Olivia Taylor has a brain tumour which has left her blind, but she leapt up to say, "Hello, Your Majesty," as she met Queen Camilla. The 7-year-old also tried her very first cup of tea, which was poured by the Queen. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on your digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now it's back to Dawn.
Thank you, Sophia, and welcome back. Right, let's have a look at what you've been saying at home. If you please keep it clean, at least, and if you're going to have a go at me, at least say something nice as well to balance it out. Right, but lots of you are getting in touch about the royals. Helen says, good morning, Helen, thank you for watching. Charles should take a leaf from the late Queen's book and stay out of politics. OK, fair point. I don't think it was that political, though, I have to admit. Meanwhile, Carol, I love that name. Good morning, Carol. Thank you for watching as well. The King needs to step in and save them from having to close due to no funds. What having to close? I'm not quite sure what you're referring to there, Carol. Meanwhile, David doesn't agree and says King Charles's vision is not his vision of the UK. And Bernard, good morning, Bernard. OK, you say what Meghan has done to the royal family only happened because Harry let it, so he's equally to blame. I'm with you on that one, Bernard. I don't subscribe to that Yoko Ono thought process where it's always the woman's fault. He's a grown man who should be able to stand on his own 2 feet, although Meghan is quite formidable, isn't she? Right, it has, keeping on the royal subject, been a busy year for the royal family as King Charles embraced his first year of the reign. One of the biggest royal events this year was the King's coronation in May. People from across the world gathered here in London to witness the big day in British history. GB News' Georgia Pearce looks back at that extraordinary day.
Saturday, 6th of May, King Charles III was crowned in a historic ceremony at Westminster Abbey. First cemented in British tradition in 1066, the event was given a modern twist by the King, as the VIP guest list of world leaders and crowned princes were for the first time joined by community heroes, who make a difference to people's lives. 20 million Britons tuned into their television sets and thousands more lined the streets of the capital as their new King and Queen prepared for the ceremony. 8 months since the passing of his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, the world witnessed a new monarch follow in her footsteps after 70 years, the longest reign in British history. The royal family as well as TV royalty took their seats in the Abbey as they eagerly awaited King Charles and Queen Camilla to arrive in the iconic Diamond Jubilee state coach. Prince Harry also made an appearance to support his father after stepping down as a working royal. He flew alone, leaving wife Meghan Markle and children Archie and Lilibet at home in California. The Duke of Sussex donned no special robes or uniform, but wore his military medals with pride. The Archbishop of Canterbury led the religious service as His Majesty was presented to the people, and swore an oath to govern the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. He was then handed the sovereign sceptre with cross, the rod of equity and mercy, and finally, the most important of all, St Edward's crown. The Prince of Wales, heir to the throne, pledged his allegiance to the King with a kiss on his father's cheek. King Charles's consort, who has been faithfully by his side for decades, was crowned and anointed as Britain's new Queen. Leaving the Abbey after the ceremony, King Charles and Queen Camilla wore robes of estates as the coronation procession saw the largest number of military personnel since Winston Churchill's funeral. As the crowds cheered for their reigning monarch, the Third Carolean era had well and truly begun. Georgia Pearce, GB News.
Now, one Boxing Day tradition is the meeting of hunts across the country. The practice is controversial and often brings clashes between organisers and animal welfare groups. Well, this year, it's no different, where campaigners have tried to stop the hunt meeting by hiring the main street for a wheelbarrow race. Joined now to explain more about what's going on here by our reporter, Jeff Moody. Good morning, Jeff. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. So what's going on where you are?
Well, the hunt came past about 10 minutes ago. It really was a sight. All of the horses and the hounds and the bugle and the tally-ho and all the rest of it, and plenty of crowds lining the streets here. Most people here in support of the hunt, but there is a very vocal group of people that are against the hunt, lots of protesters. As often seems to happen in protests these days, many of the protesters were in balaclavas that were shouting a certain amount of abuse at the crowds, not just at the the fox hunting element of it, but calling people ignorant, that sort of thing. And there was a bit of a punch-up here about 10 minutes ago. I don't know, I haven't heard whether arrests, but they could well have done, because there was certainly a bit of a punch-up right here. It's amazing, isn't it, that emotions are still running so high on this issue. 20 years after it was supposedly resolved. It was 20 years ago when the Countryside Alliance fought a robust campaign against Tony Blair's New Labour that had just swept to power. New Labour, New Britain, and one of the first things he did was to introduce this fox hunting ban. 20 years later, although tempers have cooled in a lot of ways. For instance, the Countryside Alliance are now admitting, well, you know, they'd campaigned all that time ago saying that the rural way of life was under threat and that they'd have to put all their bloodhounds down, etc., and that hadn't happened. They said they very successfully managed to work their way through the ban and find a way to survive that ban. And Tony Blair, in his dotage, has actually said that he regrets what he did too. He regrets introducing that ban. But there still is that whole strength of feeling. And of course, for the Countryside Alliance, they're looking at the corner of their eyes at the prospect of another Labour government 20 years after the ban. And we're hearing that there might be rumblings from Labour that they will now try to close some of the loopholes in the ban and really enforce elements of the ban. Well, earlier on, I spoke to Warren Marshall from the South Down and Erridge hunt. He talked a little bit about how he felt about a possible Labour government and what that could mean for fox hunting.
Just recently they've been warned by their own Lord Mandelson that it would be wrong if they want rural votes, as they will need at the next general election to gain a majority, to pick a fight that they really don't need to fight.
And the anti-hunters organised a wheelbarrow race to take place at the same time of the hunt, which they thought might distract from the hunt and stop the hunt from happening. Well, they moved the hunt an hour earlier, and the wheelbarrow race has had to be cancelled because they couldn't guarantee everybody's safety with all the horses and the hounds and all the crowds. So on this particular occasion, today, the hunt won.
Thank you very much. That's Jeff Moody, our reporter there on the biggest day for hunting in the calendar, isn't it? Now, we are going to talk, I think, to Nigel Farage, who is at a hunt in Chiddingstone Castle in Kent. Good morning, Nigel. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
So you're actually at a hunt today. Can you tell us what kind of hunt this is exactly?
I can't hear her.
Hello? OK, I think we're having our sound problems there with Nigel. Hopefully we'll be able to come back to him very soon. Still to come, we will be talking about the historic Boxing Day sporting events with broadcaster Aidan McGee. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News on Boxing Day. Don't go too far.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curson, this Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It is 10:17, and actually you don't care. It's Boxing Day. Why would you care? You shouldn't care. And this is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Dawn Neeson. Now, it's a huge day for sport, isn't it? I love my sport. Thankfully, my team, West Ham, aren't playing today, but a fair few, actually. Not a few are, not a main are, not every team is playing today, obviously. But joining me now to go through all this is our wonderful, very own Aidan McGee, who's going to talk all things sport, not just football. Bit of GGs coming up as well. My dad loved GGs. Right, but let's talk with football, obviously, because it's a big day in the football fixture, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think the biggest game, the standout fixture of the day, unquestionably, tonight, 8 o'clock at Old Trafford, Manchester United versus Aston Villa. We've been reporting in the last day or so about Sir James Ratcliffe's partial takeover of Manchester United, 25%, but crucially, from a fan's point of view, that 25% gives him 2 seats on the board. It also gives him complete control over sporting matters at the club. Hiring and firing of managers, signing of players, recruitment, etc. So that's going to be key.
Sorry, forgive me. How does that work? If they've only got 25%, why does he have say over the whole managerial who does what?
Because I don't think that was the sphere that the Glazers wanted to continue doing. They've taken the only flack you get as a football club owner emanates from what goes on the pitch. If you're able to keep hold of 75% of the club, you can enjoy the profits that come from that. Manchester United is an enormous club. It makes money. Cash cow, irrespective of whether it's successful or not. The Super League may not be too far away, judging by what we saw last week and the verdict in the ECJ. So if the flat comes their way and they're able to say, for the first time since they bought it in 2005, by the way, they bought it, the whole thing, for £790 million. Ratcliffe is buying a 25% of it for well over £1 billion. So that just shows you how profitable this club has been over a number of years. And as I say,
that was a pretty wise investment, wasn't it?
It was. They haven't won a major trophy since 2013, notwithstanding the Europa League, of course, back in 2017. So if the flat comes their way, if they're able to say, well, actually, you know, it's actually the new bloke who's in control of football, so that's his department, have a go at him, and they retain the profitable side of the business, that's perfect for them, and that's probably why they didn't want the full sale. Also, what was interesting, you know, this hole in the roof at Old Trafford and all the infrastructure issues they've had at the stadium and how it's fallen behind other stadiums like West Ham and Spurs, etc. There was actually a central funding pot for in the European Super League, which actually gives them grants to improve the stadium. So they were just hanging on. A multi-billion-pound organisation like that were hanging on for grants to mend the roof at Old Trafford. It beggars belief, doesn't it?
It does beg belief.
But if they lose tonight, I think they could. The new owners may want to make a statement, Dawn. I don't think Eric Ten Hag will last too long.
I was going to say, is smart money on the first manager to be sacked in the new year?
I would say so. Yeah, I don't want to say that, but I've seen them quite a lot recently, Man United. at home, particularly at Old Trafford, and they don't look very good. He does not look like a Man United manager to me.
No.
He needs to be a huge personality. There are fractures in the dressing room, there's no question about that.
Well, I watched, obviously, I'm a West Ham fan. We played Man United the other day and thankfully won. And the players don't seem to... You got some great players, but they don't seem to be playing.
You need a team. It's a team game. It's a team game. A team has to... The best teams are worth more than the sum of their parts. And I saw that West Ham game as well that you were at. They were absolutely awful. They've lost more games in a calendar year, I think, since... going back to 1930, before the Second World War.
Wow.
Incredible, isn't it?
That is incredible.
This is Manchester United.
Yeah, OK. And it's not every team's playing so in the Premiership. Normally
no, that's right. Well, your own West Ham are playing on Thursday at Arsenal, aren't they? I think that's a 8:15 kick-off. But one interesting match today I picked out. Sheffield United versus Luton. We're going to see the first black referee, Sam Allison, for the first time in 15 years since Uriah Rennie, who I knew quite well. Actually, I did a few shoots with him back in the day. Interesting one, Sam Allison, because, again, he's done it the hard way. Ex-non-league footballer, also had a spell with Swindon Town as well, was on the books there. He's exactly the profile I want to see coming into the game in terms of officials, because he's come from the playing route. We don't see enough of that. I want to see academy rejects coming into refereeing. Say to them, OK, you didn't quite make it in the Premier League or the Championship or whatever, but, you know, the standard is so high. Why don't you stay in the game? Why don't you be an official? It gives you a good living. You get to be among all the footballers and you get to apply your knowledge acquired from being in the field of play and suffering the tackles and getting the red cards and yellow cards, understand the nuances of the play and maybe adding some value as an official.
Yeah, we can see. So why don't more players do it? It would make sense, but...
It does. I've always felt that, knowing a few referees I felt that they've made it a little bit of a closed shop.
Really?
Yeah, it's a bit like... I don't want to compare them to the Freemasons, but there's a very difficult group of people to penetrate and get to know. There aren't many journalists who would have referee contacts, unless they're ex-referees. They're very enclosed, and getting to the inner sanctum is very, very difficult, and I can understand why they want to protect their own. They want to maybe push out that movement of ex-players.
So
we're seeing it a little bit more.
So how has it gone down? We had the first female official at a Premiership referee at a Premiership match the other day.
Well, the best compliment I can pay Rebecca Welch, Dawn, is that there wasn't saturation of coverage day in the day after. You're a huge football fan like me. You know that a good referee is one that goes unnoticed. She delivered 3 yellow cards. Marco Silva said it was a normal performance. The Fulham manager, he was losing. He preferred to concentrate on the fact that his team didn't play very well. And that, to me, is how it should be.
Exactly. You don't notice...
And it was a long time coming as well, Dawn. I remember Sean Massey. I remember Amy Rayner running the line back in 2007.
Yeah.
I mean, how it took so long to get to this point, I'll never know.
Yeah, especially seeing as females in football have had a lot of criticism recently, certainly from one particular, Joey Barton, wasn't it? Yeah.
Ex-QPR captain.
Yes. Yeah, and that's your team, and you're off to...
I'm off to Millwall today to watch Rangers play. Yeah, hopefully, we got a result there last season, and I'm hoping for another one. We don't tend to travel there that well, but I'll be travelling in style.
Good luck.
In a taxi.
But it's not all about football today, is it?
Not.
Big day for horse racing.
Big day for horse racing. Big day for jump racing specifically. 8 meetings, including those at Fontwell Park, Market Raisin. The big one as well, the King George VI Chase at Kempton at 2:30. I haven't put my money on it really, because I'm not much of a gambler, but Brave Man's Game 9-4 last year's winner hasn't quite managed to replicate the form this year. I'm told by insiders on social media, people I don't know basically, Allaho at 13-8, trained by Willie Mullins, the Irish champion trainer, would also be a good bet. I must also mention, because I do get the odd message from the odd cabinet minister here and there, Esther McVeigh has been in touch in the last hour, and she's told me about Second Glance, which is her horse, owned in a syndicate with her husband Philip Davis, of course, late of this parish. Golden Glance, the 11.55 at Aintree, 25-1 shot. And Phil has said to me that I should get £1 on it each way.
Right.
I don't listen to Phil too much, you know. But,
is that sort of like some kind of insider trader dealing thing going on there? I mean,
no, certainly not. Certainly not. This is anyone.
I'm joking, Aidan, by the way. I'm joking. No.
I don't want Esther on the phone.
What's the horse called? There, you see it on screen now.
It's called Golden Glance.
Golden Glance.
And, yeah, 11.55 today at Aintree, 25-1. I don't want to see Phil succeed at anything, so I really hope he doesn't win.
That's not very nice.
No. Phil and I just have this love-hate relationship. You know, we've just been going on for a long time.
OK, and any other sport we need to mention today?
Well, not necessarily today, but I mean, I'm interested in Anthony Joshua. I mean, he fulfilled his part of the bargain on Saturday. It looked quite convincing for the first time in many, many years, actually, Dawn, and he beat Otto Wally. Not an elite level heavyweight from Sweden, but he did finish him off inside 5 rounds. Now, the quid pro quo for that, unfortunately for Anthony, was that, I must admit, actually, I think 9 years ago today, I was spending Christmas Day with Anthony Joshua. That's just a thought that popped into my head.
Now, there's a thought.
Exactly. So...
I could cope with that.
Yeah, you could.
Am I allowed to objectify him on that?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah,
no,
not me.
I'm
You're
too
not allowed to
old.
objectify me, though, Dawn. OK, steady on. So, anyway...
I can do that as well.
Yeah, you can. I know.
Yeah.
I know. I'll let you off. So,
I'm not going to, though.
So, it was quite crucial that Deontay Wilder won his fight against Joseph Parker on the same card in Saudi on Saturday. That didn't happen. There was going to be a big money fight in Saudi between those two. Because Wilder lost, he'll probably now have to go the IBF route and go up against Filip Hrgovic, a very talented Croatian. March the 9th in Saudi, 100 million. Isn't it amazing how boxers never get criticised for plying their trade into Saudi and earning tens of millions of pounds, what footballers do?
This is the thing. I mean, boxing, look, I love boxing, OK?
So do I, yeah.
But it's all about the money, isn't it? I know to a certain extent it always has been.
Sport is business, Dawn.
Yeah, I know, but
it is.
It's like it kind of ruins it a bit, don't you think?
I'll tell you the scheduling ruins it because there's a Saudi season. You know, they don't host fights all year round, and so boxers wait until they can box in Saudi. And so for most of the year, we don't see the fights we want to see on these shores. I can't remember the last really big fight that happened at Wembley. We've seen... Go on.
On our time. You know,
exactly,
I was just going to say that, even. I love watching boxing, and you can't, because it's always like at 3 o'clock in the morning.
I know. Well, try being me. I've got a report on it, and I've got up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm coming in all
Thanks for the very kind
bleary-eyed.
offer, but I don't want to try being you, OK? I'll try being Angie Joshua. That'd be rather handy, but...
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, so...
£200 million in the bank he's got.
So, OK, so you are off to the Millwall QPR
I'm off to Millwall,
game
to watch
today.
QPR play. 1 o'clock kick-off. Corporate hospitality. I'm going easy because, obviously...
How many championship games are there today? Is quite few,
championship games, I think there are about 11 in total. So boxing, I mean, there's 5, I think... Hang on, let me count them up. 5 in the...
I've asked you a question you don't know the answer to.
I
yes.
do. No, of course I
I pride myself on this, by the way.
Of course. I do know the answer to it. It's 5 Premier League games today. You said Arsenal are going to be playing against West Ham on Thursday. We've got some tomorrow as well.
Yeah.
Liverpool in action at 5:30. I should have said as well, there is a permutation that would see Villa go top tonight if they win at Old Trafford. They don't win there very often, although it's slightly...
See, this is the weird thing, isn't it? You look at... I mean, obviously, I've supported West Ham for a very, very long time, but you look at the top of the Premiership now, and it's like... Anyone could be anywhere these days, couldn't they?
Well, they could. I mean, I think Liverpool look pretty good. I mean, they drew the last 2 home games, I think it was. Yeah, Man United 0-0, and obviously Arsenal the other day against a 1-1 when they were... well, the PGMOL issued a statement apologising once again for an infringement that went against Liverpool. Martin Odegaard's handball that should have seen them awarded a penalty. Why do they keep coming out and making apologies? It makes them look useless, doesn't it?
You know what, right? Okay, it's a running joke, isn't it, that women never understand the offside rule.
Yeah.
And, OK, all my life I've known the offside rule. Suddenly I've got to this grand old age and I have not got a clue what qualifies as offside anymore.
No, well, join
Does
the
anybody?
Club. Join the club. But I mean, every time you apologise, I mean, it's like it's like being in a relationship. If you apologise every 5 minutes, it makes you sound like you're in the wrong when even though sometimes you're not.
There's something you want to tell us here, Aid?
No, certainly not. Not right now.
But it's like, you know, you can't even celebrate a goal at football now. It's like, you know, I used to follow West Ham home and away, still go home.
Do you know that game, that Spurs-Chelsea game about 6 weeks ago on a Monday night at White Hart Lane? Everyone said, it was a magnificent game of football, never seen anything like it. I was inside the stadium and I was having to wait 7 minutes for every decision that happened. I mean, I had some woman asking me next to me where I was going on holiday this year. You know, imagine me stuck next to me.
It's like hairdressers now, isn't it? So, right, OK, well, we're waiting for this VAR decision.
Do you know one of those Jumbotron screens at White Hart Lane is the size of a tennis court?
Is it really?
Yeah, that was another detail the woman told me after she'd asked me where I was going on holiday.
So it's that bad at football now. You know, you score a goal, you jump up and you celebrate and you go, no, let's just...
You pay £1,000 for a season ticket, you end up getting stuck next to me.
Yeah. Yeah, that would really, really, really be a short straw. But we had also the first game on Christmas Eve as well, didn't we?
Yeah, Wolves against Chelsea. Again, a problem with the scheduling. Look, it doesn't happen often, Dawn, let's be honest. I mean, I think the last one was 1995 when Man United lost 3-1 to Leeds. So we don't see it often. It was a 1 o'clock kickoff. Pip actually made the point earlier on in the Newcastle v Nottingham Forest game. Nottingham Forest are having to go to Newcastle today for a 12:30 kickoff. But she said, actually, you know, they'll probably be out of the stadium by 3 o'clock. They can probably hit the big market tonight, can't they, those Forest fans?
Yeah, no, this is true.
But the scheduling, I mean, look, Chelsea did what they could. They laid on 3 coaches, and so it's not the end of the world. And the Premier League already announced that there will be no Christmas Eve fixtures next year, because apart from anything else, it's not so much the scheduling, it's the fact that the transport infrastructure at this time of year simply is not up to it, Dawn.
Brilliant. Aidan McGee, thank you very much this morning on Boxing Day. Refreshingly, not hungover, but he possibly will be after the match this afternoon.
Might need it.
Enjoy. Yeah, you might need it with that one. Right, coming up, we'll hear from Nigel Farage. I think we've got him back on the line at the Hunt in Kent. But first, here is the news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Thank you, John. It's 10:30. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. Labour is considering plans to process asylum seekers' claims overseas, according to a report in The Times. Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper and Shadow Immigration Minister Stephen Kinnock have reportedly been speaking to asylum experts to draw up an alternative way to stop migrants crossing the Channel in small boats. The plan would see asylum seekers have their claims processed in a second country, with successful applicants allowed to enter the UK. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has previously dismissed the government's Rwanda scheme as a gimmick. Tory MP Mike Freer tells GB News his constituency offices remain a crime scene as police investigate a suspected arson attack. Fire crews were called to the building in North London on Christmas Eve after it was partially damaged by the blaze. The MP told GB News police are examining CCTV footage and he does not yet know when his offices will be released back to him. No one was in the building at the time of the incident. Marks and Spencer's and John Lewis are among major retailers who have opted to remain closed this Boxing Day. Traditionally, the day after Christmas is one of the busiest shopping days of the year, with this year expected to be the biggest in 5 years. Wickes, Pets at Home and Home Bargains, as well as major supermarkets Aldi, Iceland and the majority of Waitrose stores will not open today. More than 3/4 of people are expected to do the majority of their shopping online instead. And you can get more on all those stories by visiting our website at gbnews.com.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It is 10:35, but you don't need to know that. It's Boxing Day. Why do you need to know the time? You're going nowhere. You're staying here with us, watching and listening to GB News. Right now, I think we are going to go back to... Oh, no, actually, no, not yet. I'm joined again by broadcaster and journalist Claire Muldoon and former advisor Michael Gove, Charlie Riley, who are with me all this morning.
Morning, Dawn.
Thankfully. And we now, by the way, because it is Boxing Day, have a Bucks fizz. OK, just saying, there is more orange, click, cheers.
How
cheers.
much? More what?
More. There's more orange in this than champagne.
Are you
Just
doing
saying.
a boxing hunt after this?
Any case, careful, Claire, you young lady. There is definitely more orange in this. But cheers, everybody. Happy Boxing Day. Hope you're enjoying yourselves as much as we are here in the studio.
And we are.
But don't go too far. Now, we are going to be talking now. We're going to go back to Christmas TV because I want to talk about Doctor Who. We didn't have time to talk about Doctor Who, did we?
Well, you know, I'm glad we brought that up because we've dipped in and dipped out as a family on Doctor Who for many years, and Christopher Eccleston, as far as I'm concerned, was the best ever.
He was pretty good.
David Tennant hit the mark, but then subsequently not been bothered with it until this new Doctor Who trained at the Royal Conservatoire in Glasgow, who is he looks amazing. The styling was fantastic, his voice was amazing, and he even wore a kilt. And that, for me, was it. He's outstanding. Nukati Gatwa. He is
You can see,
fabulous.
yeah, we can see Nukati dancing there. I have to say, look, I was saying looking hot because he's in a very sweaty disco, but he actually looks very hot.
But the other thing was, Russell T Davies is really on point in certain things that he writes. Years and Years, etc., or Stephen Moffat, was absolutely fantastic. However, I think Russell T Davies is back to his form now. There was no virtue signalling in this.
You know what, Claire? That's what I wanted to mention, because it was more like an action thing going on. It was more like a Charlie's looking at us like, you're two mad women talking about a very hot young Doctor Who.
He can think we're a bit mad, but don't forget, he's in jeans and trainers.
Yeah,
right, let's just leave that there.
So
Dawn, what were you saying?
Yeah, so he could have turned up in a kilt looking a bit like that and we'd have been OK.
With the viewers, I'm told, outside.
No, but it's more...
Hit and miss.
The thing I really liked about it, Claire, and Charlie, you can join in whenever you want, is the fact that it's more of an action thing going on. We had the floating pirate... Oh, I shouldn't give too much spoilers away, should we? But we had sort of like proper, quite scary monsters.
Well, I think Doctor Who, as a franchise, is in very safe hands with this new Doctor. He delivered the script. The plot was easy, it was youthful, it was fresh, it was vibrant. It had that family theme running through of the foundling, that you know, and Davina McCall playing herself as the character.
Oh, there were some great bits in it, weren't there? Yeah,
from Long Lost Families, and that whole narrative, it was just so lovely at Christmas.
Well, once I finished catching up on EastEnders from February, because that's when the plot started, as we heard in the last hour.
As Hayley said, we can watch it on iPlayer, on catch-up.
So once I finish with EastEnders, I'll tune in.
Charlie, I've got to catch up on EastEnders from 1986, which is about the last time I watched it. But talking of that, Anita Dobson was also in Doctor Who, wasn't she?
She was. And I said to the children, do you know who she's married to? And they were like, no, who's... I went, Brian May from Queen. No one ever would have known that.
Oh, yeah, no, I knew that.
Did you know that?
I didn't know. No, who's Brian May?
See, I knew that. I set that up for you.
Seriously? Did you just say who's Brian May?
Luckily, I know who Brian May is because I'm a big fan of Queen and the...
what did you just do there when you went Queen?
That was my...
What was that, what?
I was plucking the G-string.
On a guitar, by the way. If you're listening on radio... Charlie is talking about...
to the hard shoulder now, listening to that.
If you are listening on radio, Charlie is talking about a guitar, right? Get any other thought of G-strings out of your head.
Or dental floss as a recording.
Even though it's Boxing Day and you may have had a Bucks fizz like we have as well. But talking of Brian May, it's a big day for hunting. And he's obviously very pro-wildlife and badgers and things like that. What do we think about hunting? Charlie, you've been very quiet.
He's also, I don't think I'm giving too much for him, I think it's in public. He's also a constituent of Michael Gove when he was the Environment Secretary, and I think there was some conversation.
Inside
he was
info,
a big campaigner, as you're absolutely right to say, big campaigner of environmental and animal welfare causes. I think, look, there was what jumps into my mind when we talk about fox hunting, it goes back to the 2017 Tory party election manifesto that Theresa May suggested and brought back in, that this is something that could be brought back to the table as a free vote. And the amount of Conservatives and people that you might naturally have thought might be more pro-fox hunting, the support wasn't there. So I do think there is an over-inflated view still in this country, particularly with those who are pro-hunt, that is still something that the Countryside Alliance and people do want. And I just don't think it's there within the general public. I think it's such a small issue for such a small group of people that actually mainstream population just don't care. And I'm with them, I'm afraid. I mean, I don't want to see fox hunting. I understand the issues around maybe foxes and the way in which they might be detrimental to the local environment area. But fox hunting is not the answer to curtailing that particular issue.
It has actually been banned in England and Wales since 2004.
But I don't understand the argument why we need to bring it back in its previous form. I haven't heard any real articulation. I mean, the chap earlier on said, well, if people want to vote it down, if it was a free vote in Parliament, they've got a fight on their hands. Well, it's not been there since 2004. You're absolutely right. But I don't understand the overwhelming argument as to why it should be brought back.
Right, while we're talking about hunting, I think we can now go to Nigel Farage, who is actually at a hunt in Chiddingston Castle in Kent. Let's have a listen to what he's got to say.
Chiddingston Castle in Kent, it's a beautiful morning, and this is the West Kent and Old Surrey and Burstow hunt. They meet here every year. There'll be a big crowd here today, 2,000 or 3,000, and it's expected around the country about 250,000 people will attend hunt meets. Now, it's important to remember that since 2004, these packs haven't actually been hunting foxes, they're hunting a trail. And it does seem bizarre that there's now pressure being put on the Labour Party, if they come to power, to ban people riding horses and following. The argument is that sometimes the pack of hounds will pick up the scent of a fox and chase a fox. But actually, that applies to every single dog in the country. You go for a walk in the country, if your dog sees a rabbit or a hare, it will chase after it. It probably won't catch it. So this community, which has had to adapt to not really hunting, but has still managed to maintain many of its traditions. And remember, these days there are a big coming together of country people. We've got a beer tent over here, very good, local brew, coffees, burgers, and it's a big social event. It's a big thing in people's calendar, and it's all about people going out riding, seeing the wonderful dogs, and actually having fun. And I get the feeling that PETA and others, what they really object to is people actually enjoying themselves. So I would say very clearly, leave trail hunting alone. We do have to control foxes. There isn't quite unanimity on that, but certainly a very big majority of people understand that it isn't just the fox that gets your chickens or your ducks, but actually, if there are too many foxes, wildlife suffers very badly. Too many foxes in East Anglia, there'll be no hares in East Anglia. Too many foxes here, songbirds will suffer. So we all agree that foxes need to be controlled, and actually, contrary to much of the myth, a pack of dogs that snaps, the neck of a dog is probably far less cruel than shooting a fox, not cleanly, that crawls away and dies of gangrene. The fox is a beautiful creature, but it is a pest. Anyway, today isn't fox hunting, it's trail hunting. It's going to be a very jolly time, and it feels like this debate that we had all those years ago has been reinvigorated. And one last point to make. Both Peter Mandelson and Tony Blair, who took a £1 million donation from an anti-hunting charity, now say the legislation was a mistake. So let's just leave alone where we are now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nigel Farage, there at his own hunt down in Kent today. What did you make of what Nigel had to say there?
Well, clearly, Nigel Farage knows exactly what he's saying all of the time. He's a very measured and very calculated orator. And this is something very dear to his heart. So it's trail hunting now, is the way I think they're framing it. But We can't forget, though, of the traditions of sometimes in this country that people want to do this on Boxing Day. It doesn't affect me, and I'm not saying it doesn't affect me, therefore it's okay. If this is something that's been done through historical time, through many times, people get enjoyment out of it. As he said, they had local brewers down. It's very much a community, family environment. So anything like that, I'm very pro, can I just say. So if this is what it's been, if this is what he's doing, if this is what makes people sometimes happy in Boxing Day out in the country, who are we to say stop it?
And I think, Charlie, you know, all three of us live in London. Many people watching and listening today will live in the big cities. And it's all very well us sitting pontificating about something we don't really understand because we're not part of a rural community.
No, I think that's true. I mean, I'm all for a beer tent and a burger van, but I think, you know, and I do agree, Nigel is very articulate, he knows what he's asking for, but I just think on this issue it's still unclear because he talked about there that, you know, foxes are a pest and, you know, they can impact on other local
domestic life.
So what are you asking for? Do you want to bring back real fox hunting as it was in the past, or do you want to stick with the trail hunting, which sounds to me perfectly reasonable if it is a tradition and if it's not hurting anybody and it's a tradition that people want to continue? I'm all for that, but I think people just have to be absolutely clear about what do they want. Do they want to bring back fox hunting or do they want to keep it as it is?
And are they showing Watership Down in a tent there as well?
I love Watership Down. It's a great film. But while we're on politics, we're going to stay on politics a bit here. The big political announcement today on the front of the Times, or the Telegraph, or companies, Labour is drawing up legally watertight alternative to Rwanda. Yes, but they said they're drawing up a plan, but they didn't actually go into details of the plan, Charlie. What do you make of what they've said today?
Well, you surprised me that there's no meat on the bones there or there's no detail because I think that's just been part of the Labour playbook at the minute, which is making headline announcements, getting people to look at the Labour Party, but not actually saying very much about it. And I think, look, if there were alternatives, I'm pretty sure government lawyers and government civil servants who would ultimately be the ones doing all the legwork for whoever's in government would have come up with another plan by now. I know they want to look at sort of checking people in at different countries rather than before people actually come into the UK. Well, fine, but I think that is happening anyway. You saw the Prime Minister out in Italy a few weeks ago, just before Christmas, doing a deal with the Italians to stop the flow of people coming right across Europe. You don't just appear in France, by the way, and then appear in the UK. There is a whole movement, a mass migration movement coming across Europe. So you have to do deals and work with other countries within the EU before the problem gets to the shores of Dover or the southeast. So all of that seems to me to be taking place anyway. And as you say, it sounds probably just another headline, a good headline for Labour because people are talking about it and it's on the front page of the Times. But if there's no detail, then it's not going to be much cop for the British public.
Yeah, it's in the Times today. It's actually the front page of the Times. It's considering detailed plans for offshore processing schemes. Just haven't given us the details.
Yeah, and sounds great, but if it could be done, I'm sure this government would be doing it more than anybody else. But the fact that, you know, every time, you know, you've got to look at what's happening in Parliament, and if every time legislation comes forward, whatever the legislation is, if it's voted down by the Labour Party, which it has been, then you can't really sort of take them at face value to say they'll be even tougher when they've been voting down every other measure that's been put forward so far.
Absolutely. And one of my big bugbears of the opposition at the minute is they've kept stum on so many other issues, right? We, as an electorate, need to be led. We need to be, you know, with confidence with who we have in government. But also, don't forget, opposition MPs are still elected members of Parliament, really ought still to be there to send out the message as our MPs, as us, the electorate, of what we want happening and what we want done. So for them to keep stum on so many other issues, I think it's actually abdicating their responsibility to a big part on their role as MPs. Because I'll tell you, as long as there are refugees fleeing persecution, as long as there are illegal immigrants trying to come through here with the horrible business model attached to human trafficking, human slavering, if they've kept stum on this, more fool them. And I think it's actually wrong of them on a moral level as well. They should have been putting through things, well, why don't we do this? Have you thought of that? You know, instead of leaving people high and dry.
I'm glad
it's immoral.
This particular road, Claire, because the other political story today is sort of like, you know, the next general election will be happening within the next, you know, within the next year, earlier rather than later. Are the Tories ready for a general election next year, as Rishi Sunak has implied is going to happen? is Labour ready for a general election? I mean, you know, the polls are saying Labour are going to win. But, I mean, we have had surprises before, famously with John Major, when
he was re-elected,
and it happened. And I think you're right, Claire. I mean, it's like no one knows now what anyone stands for anymore. Everyone infamously flip-flops on everything and reverses.
It's so sad. It's so sad.
And the Reform Party are probably going to take votes away from the Conservative Party. Can you see that being a thing, Charlie?
I mean, in crude terms, I certainly think they'll take votes away. Whether they take enough seats is another question, because ultimately, in crude terms, the election now, it's a numbers game.
Yeah.
And so politics and all
that's what first past the post is, isn't it? It is just a numbers game.
Exactly so. And I think, look, the reason why people ask, well, why has Rwanda sucked up so much energy over the last few months, and why is the government not talking about things that matter, and why are opposition MPs not talking about things that matter, and why is Sir Keir Starmer positioning himself as the heir to Margaret Thatcher and still talking about immigrants?
It's just shocking.
Because the red wall seats are so important, and this is a big issue for people, particularly people in the north, people that particularly voted for Brexit. Those are the seats that you've got to hold. You've also got to try and hold the South East and the South West, where they might tail off to the Lib Dems. You've got the competition for the Tories with the Reform Party. But it is all about who you can articulate the right message to the right people, to get the right number of seats to form a majority. And that's why I'm afraid to say that, you know, no party seems to be ready unless, you know, the Tories deliver on its priorities. Economy's getting better. Yep, that's a good start. Small boats down by a third, but there's more to do in all of those areas. So the Prime Minister will be able to go to the country and say, look, I gave you my priorities at the start of January 2023. We're now into 2024. I've ticked however many of them, or we're making good progress in this area. The choice at the next general election will either be, you know, the next Prime Minister will either be Rishi Sunak or Sir Keir Starmer. A vote for any other party will let Labour in through the back door. And that includes Reform, or includes the Lib Dems in the South.
Well, let's hope it doesn't include the SNP.
And indeed. I
mean, let's hope they are blasted to oblivion.
Yes. Hear, hear.
Well, I'm going to actually handbrake turn on this subject now, because we are going to be talking about shopping very, very quickly. We're running out of time, unfortunately, but obviously it's a big shopping day. It's the Boxing Day sales, and evidently, how many of us are going out shopping, and what we spend? 3.7 billion today is expected to be spent on the sale. I know. Not us, obviously, because we're here working very hard. Going shopping this afternoon?
Well, I'll certainly, straight after this studio, I'll be going shopping for a new pair of trousers for my next...
Thank goodness.
We may have mentioned it, Claire, once or twice.
Dawn.
Once or twice. But I thought I was quite fashionable this morning, honestly. I thought I did.
Well, you know what Thought did?
Which fashion magazines are you reading exactly, Charlie?
Or professional magazines?
I haven't got my glasses on, so I haven't got all contacts.
You need glasses?
Evidently.
While we're doing a bit of a man bullying here, another story I wanted to mention very, very briefly, man flu. You may have noticed I've been coughing a bit recently. It's a cold, OK? Nothing more than a cold. The husband's got a cough much, much worse than mine, obviously. Man flu is a thing. Women are genetically proven to be hardier than men.
That's why women have children. I'll leave it there. After having had 4...
Yeah, exactly. You've done 4 times.
So if men were to have children, we wouldn't still be alive.
So, yeah, I'm sorry.
Population would just... No, I am.
Oh, that's right.
We are friends, really. We are
running out of time. Claire Muldoon and Charlie Riley, thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome,
really
Dawn. Thank you.
Boxing Day. And thank you for watching. I loved having your company, love hearing your thoughts. But there's much more coming up on GB News today. Don't go too far. But let's find out what the weather's doing if you are going to venture out to those sales. And you can take us on the radio, remember, we're on the radio as well. So let's get the weather update with Greg Dewhurst.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather. It is looking mostly dry for Boxing Day, much brighter as well. Plenty of sunny spells, though rain will return into the southwest later. So this morning it's chilly. Bright, plenty of sunny spells, some icy stretches across Scotland, wintry showers across the far north here, but for the vast majority, a great day to be outside, plenty of hazy sunshine and dry weather to enjoy. However, Cloud and rain will spill into parts of Cornwall and into Devon as the afternoon progresses. Here, 11 or 12 Celsius, but for most, something a little more festive, around 4 to 6 Celsius. As we move through into the evening time, this rain will slowly push its way northeastward, some heavy bursts developing as it moves into parts of Wales, Northern Ireland too, and then into the early hours, the winds start to pick up as well. We could see gusts of 60, possibly 70 miles an hour starting to move into the far southwest. And temperatures as a result mild in the south, but cold across the north. Some icy stretches developing across Scotland, some hill snow also developing across southern Scotland, and then mainland Scotland as we move through the day. Heavy rain for much of the UK, pushing its way slowly north and eastwards. Perhaps some drier weather across the far southeast, and then some brighter skies moving into Northern Ireland later. So an unsettled day for everyone, especially if you're travelling. Do take care, staying on the mild side for all.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
I'll paraphrase that for you. It's wet, windy, miserable. Don't go anywhere. Sit on your sofas, watch GB News. It is brilliant. Thank you for watching me this morning. We are the People's Channel. Up next, though, cracking political show coming up. A political editor reviews the year in politics. So stay tuned, stay cosy, don't go out in that weather.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel.